An old man fell face down on the airport floor.
Sir, can you hear me? Stay with me.
His velvet coat was wrinkled. His face was pale. A businessman walked past him. A woman with a suitcase stopped.
Last flight, Flight 1482 to Chicago.
No one stopped, except her, a black woman. Only $38 in her bank account. A scholarship interview tomorrow morning. Her only chance in 3 years. He grabbed her
Please,
wrist.
don't leave me here.
Okay. I'm coming.
Through the terminal window, she watched her flight take off and disappear into the dark night sky. Her dream vanished. She tightened her grip on his hand. She didn't know him. She didn't know what price this decision would cost her, or what it would bring her. Let me take you back. 48 hours before that airport floor. Memphis, Tennessee. A studio apartment the size of a parking spot. Hot plate on the counter. Textbooks stacked where a nightstand should be. Scrubs draped over the only chair. And Tiana Anderson, sitting cross-legged on her bed, folding clothes into a duffel bag she's had since college. Her phone was on speaker. Her mother's voice filled the room. "You packed your good blouse?" "Mama, I only have one blouse." "That's the one. You iron it?" "Yes, ma'am." "And your transcripts? Your letters?" "All in the folder, printed at the library yesterday." Loretta Anderson, 62 years old, retired elementary school teacher, living on disability after a back injury that took her out of the classroom 6 years ago. She couldn't walk to the mailbox most days, but she could still mother like it was her full-time job. "This is the one, Tiana. Don't you let nerves eat your blessing." Tiana smiled, but her eyes weren't smiling. They were doing math. The flight was $284, non-refundable. She'd pulled it from 3 paychecks, skipping lunches, picking up extra shifts, telling herself it was worth it. The scholarship covered tuition, housing, and a stipend. Full ride. If she got it, everything changed. If she didn't, she'd spent money she couldn't afford to lose on a dream that might not want her back. She opened her bank app. $38.14. She closed it fast, like looking at a wound. Before she left the apartment, she stopped at Mr. Adler's place, the homebound patient she looked after 3 nights a week. 81 years old, early-stage dementia, sweet as pie when he remembered who she was. She taped a handwritten note to his medication tray. Tuesday, blue pill AM, white pill PM. I'll be back Thursday. You're doing great, Mr. A. T. She stood in his doorway for a second, watching him sleep. Then she pulled the door shut and left. That night, her last shift before the flight. Memphis Regional Home Health, the graveyard rotation, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Tiana checked vitals on 4 patients, changed linens, administered medication, calmed a confused woman at 2 a.m. who thought Tiana was her daughter, held her hand until she fell back asleep. Her co-worker, Denise, leaned against the supply closet. "Girl, this time next year, you're going to be in a white coat." "Don't jinx it." "I'm not jinxing. I'm prophesying. And when you're a whole doctor, I'm telling everybody I knew you when you were elbow-deep in bedpans." Tiana laughed, the kind of laugh that only comes when you're exhausted, but the joke is too good to waste. She checked her bank app one more time before clocking out. $38.14. Same as before. Obviously. Money doesn't grow in hospital hallways. She drove home in a car that needed an oil change 3 months ago. Packed. Slept 2 hours. Took a bus to the airport because parking would have cost more than she had left in her account. Memphis International Airport, 6:15 p.m. Tiana found gate B14 and sat down in a plastic chair that was somehow both hard and sticky. She clutched the manila folder, 3 years of transcripts, applications, recommendation letters, and one shot at getting her life back on track. She was early, an hour and a half before boarding. That's when she noticed him. 15 feet away, an old man, sitting alone. Corduroy jacket, the kind nobody's worn since the 90s. Buttons done up wrong. No carry-on, no phone, no book. No one with him. He wasn't waiting. He was just sitting, staring at nothing. His hands trembled around a paper coffee cup. Every few minutes he'd look around, slow, confused, like a man who woke up in a room he didn't recognize. Tiana watched him. Something was off. She knew that look. She'd seen it at 2 a.m. on the ward. She'd seen it in Mr. Adler's eyes on his bad days. That was a man who didn't know where he was. She almost stood up, almost walked over. Then she checked the clock. Boarding in 30 minutes. She couldn't afford to miss this flight. Literally. She looked back at her folder, looked back at him. He was still sitting, still trembling, still alone. 22 minutes to boarding. Then he stood up, swayed, and his legs gave out. Tiana didn't think. She just moved. Bag dropped. Manila folder hit the floor. 3 years of transcripts, applications, recommendation letters scattering across the tile. She was on her knees beside him in 3 seconds, tilted his head, checked his airway. 2 fingers on his neck, feeling for a pulse. The same motions she did 4 times a night on the ward. Muscle memory. His eyes opened. Not alert, terrified. The deep, animal kind of terrified that comes when a person doesn't know where they are, what day it is, or who's touching them. He grabbed her wrist, ice-cold fingers, squeezing so hard it hurt. Helen? Tiana's breath caught. Helen, you came back. His eyes were locked on hers, but he wasn't seeing her. He was seeing someone else. Someone gone. She didn't pull away, didn't correct him. She covered his hand with hers and leaned close enough to smell coffee and old wool. I'm here. I'm right here. His breathing slowed, just barely. His lips were turning gray-blue. His pulse under her fingers was weak, uneven, tripping over itself like a broken clock. Don't leave me. Please. Everyone leaves. I'm not going anywhere. Behind her, the gate agent's voice flat and bored. Final boarding, Flight 1482 to Chicago O'Hare. All remaining passengers proceed to the gate immediately. Tiana didn't turn around. A businessman in polished shoes walked past, close enough that his heel almost clipped the old man's shoulder, eyes on his phone. A woman with a rolling suitcase stopped for 1 second, then steered around them like they were furniture. Tiana yelled, "Somebody call 911!" Nobody reached for a phone. The gate agent glanced over, then picked up his receiver to call the next gate about a connecting flight. Tiana pulled out her own phone, one hand dialing, one hand holding his head off the cold tile. I need an ambulance at Memphis International, gate B14. Elderly male, collapsed, weak pulse, possible cardiac event. He's conscious but disoriented. He doesn't know where he is. She stayed on that floor for 11 minutes. Holding a stranger's hand while the gate door closed, the jet bridge pulled back, and Flight 1482 pushed away from the terminal. Through the window, she saw it, her plane, taxiing toward the runway, then lifting off, lights blinking, climbing into the dark Memphis sky until it was just a dot. Then nothing. 3 years, $284. Gone in 60 seconds. When the paramedics arrived, they loaded him onto the stretcher. His hand dropped away from hers. He reached back out, fingers trembling in the air, grasping at nothing. The EMT looked at Tiana. "You family?" "No." "Know his name?" "No." "We got it from here, ma'am." She looked at him on the stretcher, eyes open, glassy, scared, mouth moving but no words. A 78-year-old man surrounded by strangers who would treat his body but wouldn't hold his hand. "I'll ride with him." "You sure about that?" "He doesn't have anybody else." She climbed in. The doors slammed shut. At Memphis Regional, they wheeled him through the ER double doors. A nurse blocked Tiana. "Are you a relative?" "No, I found him at the airport." "Family only past this point." The doors swung shut in her face. Tiana stood in the hallway, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of antiseptic and stale coffee. Alone. She sat down in the waiting room. 11:48 p.m. She called the scholarship office. Voicemail. "Hi, this is Tiana Anderson, scheduled for the Davis Moore interview tomorrow morning. I had an emergency. Someone collapsed at the airport and I couldn't leave. I'm sorry. Please call me back." Her voice cracked on the second please. She hung up before it broke completely. She called her mother. "Mama, I missed the flight." A long pause. Loretta didn't ask what happened. She knew her daughter. If Tiana missed that flight, someone needed her more than she needed that seat. "What happened, baby?" "An old man collapsed at the gate. Nobody helped him. I couldn't just walk past him, Mama." Quiet. "You did what I raised you to do." Tiana pressed the phone against her forehead. Eyes closed. The vending machine hummed. The fluorescent light above her flickered once, twice. Somewhere behind those double doors, a man who called her by his dead wife's name was lying in a bed without a single person in the world who knew he was there. She opened her bank app. $38.14. The ticket was one way. She couldn't afford a cab home. She came back the next morning. She didn't have to. Nobody asked her to. The hospital didn't call. The old man didn't know her number, didn't know her name. But at 8:15 a.m., Tiana Anderson walked through the front doors of Memphis Regional with $2 worth of vending machine coffee and asked the receptionist about the elderly man brought in from the airport last night. The receptionist didn't look up. "Are you family?" "No." "Then I can't give you any information. I rode in the ambulance with him. He didn't have anyone. I just want to know if he's okay." The receptionist looked up now, not with sympathy, but with the tired suspicion of someone who'd heard every story. "Ma'am, I understand, but without... She's with me, Dr. Raymond Ellis, 60 years old, black, gray at the temples. The kind of doctor who still wore his stethoscope around his neck even when he didn't need to, because it made patients feel safe. He'd treated Edward last night. He'd also watched Tiana ride in with a stranger and refused to leave until someone forced her to. He waved her through. Walking down the hallway, Ellis glanced at her. "You handled the airway check at the scene?" "Yes, sir." "Textbook. You in the medical field?" Tiana paused. "I was. Almost." He nodded. Didn't push. He'd seen that answer 100 times. Smart people, capable people, stopped short by money or circumstance, or both. Room 312. She pushed the door open. The old man was sitting up in bed, Hospital gown, IV in his arm, morning light from the window falling across the white sheets. He looked at her. Blank. No recognition. His eyes scanned her face the way you'd scan a stranger on the bus. Polite. Distant. Nothing. Then something shifted. It was slow, like fog lifting. His eyes sharpened, his jaw set. The confusion peeled back, and underneath it was a man. Alert, present, aware. "You're the one who stayed." His voice was different now. Steady, clear. The trembling was gone. This was not the same man who'd grabbed her wrist and called her Helen. "I'm Ed." "Tiana." "Tiana." He said it like he was filing it somewhere important. "Why'd you stay?" She shrugged. "You asked me not to leave." He stared at her for a long moment. She couldn't read what was behind his eyes, but something was working. "Most people don't do that." "I know." They sat in comfortable silence for a minute. Then his eyes clouded. It happened fast, like a curtain dropping. He looked around the room. His hands started shaking. His face changed from calm to panicked in 2 seconds. "Where am I? Where's Helen? I need to find Helen." Tiana didn't flinch. She'd done this 1,000 times at 2 a.m. on the ward. She pulled the chair closer, sat down, took his hand. "You're in the hospital, Ed. You're safe. Everything's okay." "But Helen..." "She's okay too. You're safe right here." His breathing slowed. His grip tightened around her fingers. The panic drained out of him like water leaving a bathtub. Slow, then all at once. He leaned back against the pillow, closed his eyes. When a nurse came in to check his vitals, Tiana asked quietly, "Does he have any family listed? Emergency contact?" Nothing. No contact. No insurance card. Just a wallet, $60 cash, and a photo of a woman. Tiana looked at the bedside table. The wallet was there, old leather, worn soft. She didn't touch it, but she could see on the inner flap 3 letters embossed in faded gold. E.J.C. She didn't know what they meant. Not yet. She came back the next day. And the day after that. Nobody asked her to. Edward didn't remember asking. Most mornings he didn't remember her at all. But every afternoon, Tiana showed up at room 312 with a dollar store crossword puzzle and vending machine coffee. 2 sugars, because that's how he liked it on his good days. Edward's mind had a rhythm. Good hours and bad hours. High tide and low tide. You couldn't predict when the fog would come or how long the sun would last. You just showed up and adjusted. On his good hours, he was someone else. Sharp, quick, funny in the dry way of a man who'd spent decades choosing every word. He told stories about building things, never said what. About failing. "I went broke twice before I was 40, slept in my car the second time, ate peanut butter for 3 months straight. To this day I can't look at a jar of Skippy." About stubbornness. "The only difference between me and every other fool with a dream is I didn't quit when it hurt." He never said what he built. Not because he was hiding, but because on some hours he genuinely didn't know. On his bad hours, the fog rolled in without warning. He'd call her Helen. He'd ask where his wife was, voice cracking. He'd try to climb out of bed, convinced he was late for a meeting that happened in 1994. Once, he grabbed the bedside phone and started barking orders. "Tell the board I want those numbers by Friday, and get me the Chicago projections." Then stopped mid-sentence, stared at the receiver like a foreign object, put it down slowly. Who was I talking to? Nobody, Ed. Phone's not connected. Oh. Long pause. Did I sound important at least? You sounded like a man who ran things. He almost smiled at that. Almost. Tiana handled all of it. Didn't flinch at the confusion. Didn't correct him when he called her Helen. She pulled her chair closer, took his hand, and talked him back to shore. Gently, firmly, the way she'd done 1,000 times on the night shift. Mr. Adler at 3 a.m. trying to walk out in his bathrobe. Mrs. Patterson on the ward who believed Nixon was still president. The confused woman who cried for her daughter every night until Tiana held her hand and hummed her to sleep. This was her world. Not the heroic kind of caregiving people make movies about, but the quiet, grinding, invisible kind nobody sees and nobody pays enough for. Day 3. His longest lucid stretch. He asked about her life. She told him everything. Pre-med at the University of Memphis. 3 semesters in, money ran out. Student loans on a degree she never finished. Mother on disability. 2 jobs. The scholarship interview she'd missed because she was sitting in this chair instead. No drama, no guilt. Just facts. I was supposed to fly to Chicago that night. Davis Moore Medical Scholarship. Full ride. Tuition, housing, everything. I missed the interview. Quiet. The kind that fills a room. Because of me. Because you needed help. That's not the same thing, Tiana. It is to me. She left that evening the way she always did. Small wave, quiet goodbye. She didn't see Edward's face as she walked away. Didn't see his jaw tighten, his hand grip the bedsheet, his eyes go sharp in a way that had nothing to do with disease and everything to do with a decision forming behind them. That night, alone in room 312, the lucid window blew wide open. Edward picked up the phone. His voice dropped low, controlled, commanding. 40 years of boardrooms in every syllable. Find out everything about the Davis Moore Medical Scholarship. Chicago. Who runs it? What the criteria are. Everything. Pause. Tonight, not tomorrow. He hung up. 30 seconds of perfect stillness. A CEO in a hospital gown, running an invisible empire from a bed with plastic rails. Then the fog crept in. He looked at the phone, picked it up, put it down, picked it up again. Couldn't remember who he'd called or why his pulse was racing. He stared at the ceiling until he fell asleep. Next morning, Tiana's apartment. Laptop open on the bed. 3 sentences. Dear Ms. Anderson, we regret to inform you that your absence from the scheduled interview constitutes a forfeiture of your candidacy. The position has been offered to another candidate. You are welcome to reapply in the next application cycle, October of next year. 18 months. Not a guarantee, just a chance to interview again. She read it twice. Closed the laptop. Sat on the edge of the bed with her hands in her lap. Didn't cry. Breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The same rhythm she taught panicking patients at 2 a.m. Got dressed. Went to work. Day 5. Everything changed. Tiana arrived expecting crossword puzzles and coffee. Instead, room 312 was being cleared. Monitors unplugged. Beds stripped. He's being discharged. Family came. Family. At the front entrance, a black town car idled at the curb. Tinted windows. A driver standing with folded hands. The kind of car Tiana had only ever seen on television. A woman stepped out. Mid-50s. Charcoal suit tailored like armor. Hair pulled back tight. She walked past Tiana without a glance and addressed Edward, now in a wheelchair, lucid, clear-eyed. with stiff precision. "Mr. Crawford, the board has been informed of your absence. Nolan is quite concerned." Crawford. The lobby changed. Nurses straightened. The receptionist stopped typing. The air itself tightened, like the room had inhaled and forgotten to exhale. Edward looked at the woman with decades of authority compressed into a single glance. "I'm aware, Genevieve." Then he turned to Tiana. From the corduroy jacket folded on his lap, the same jacket from gate B14, he pulled a business card. Plain white, heavy stock, embossed. Edward J. Crawford, Chairman Emeritus, Crawford Bellingham Industries. Below the text, in shaky handwriting, a phone number. "Call me next week, Tiana. I have something I'd like to discuss with you." No fog, no tremor. This was the real man underneath the disease, the one who built an empire from nothing. The driver opened the door. Genevieve took the wheelchair. Edward disappeared behind tinted glass. Through the window, Tiana watched him, already fumbling the seatbelt, brow furrowed, confused. He left her as one man. He'd arrive home as another. Tiana stood on the sidewalk, flipped the card, typed the name into her phone. Forbes, Fortune, Bloomberg. A face she recognized, younger, sharper, but the same eyes. And a number with so many zeros it didn't look real. $4.2 billion. The man who'd grabbed her wrist and whispered, "Helen." The man she'd fed crossword clues and vending machine coffee for 5 days was one of the wealthiest people in America. She looked at the card, then at the empty curb, then at her bank app. $38.14. 2 weeks later, Tiana Anderson walked into a building that cost more than every house on her street combined. Crawford Bellingham Industries, Chicago. Marble floors, glass walls. A 2-story atrium with the company crest etched into stone above the entrance. People in suits moved through the lobby like they belonged to a different species. Fast, polished, certain of where they were going. Tiana was wearing her one good blouse, the ironed one. Edward met her in a private dining room on the executive floor. White tablecloth, real silverware, a view of Lake Michigan that looked like a screensaver. Today was a strong, lucid day, the strongest she'd seen. He sat upright, eyes clear, voice steady. No tremor in his hands, no fog behind his gaze. If you didn't know, you'd never guess anything was wrong with this man. He looked like exactly what he was, the founder of a Fortune 500 empire. He got to the point. "I'm creating a new medical scholarship through the Crawford Foundation. Full ride, tuition, housing, living stipend, mentorship through our healthcare division. Named after my late wife." He paused. "I want you to be the first recipient." Tiana's hands shook. She set down her fork so he wouldn't see. "Mr. Crawford, why me?" Edward leaned back, looked at her the way he looked at everything when the fog was gone. Directly, completely, without waste. Kindness without an audience is the only kind that counts. He let that sit. Then, "I've sat in boardrooms with people who'd sell their mothers for a quarterly bump. You gave up your future for a confused old man in a corduroy jacket who didn't even know your name. That's not charity, Tiana. That's character. And I've learned the hard way. Character is the only thing you can't buy." Tiana accepted. She didn't trust her voice to say more than, "Yes." In the lobby afterward, she called her mother. Her voice cracked on the first word. "Mama, I got a scholarship. Full ride. Everything. Tuition, housing, all of it. Loretta was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was thick. See, baby? God don't waste good hearts. Tiana leaned against the marble wall. Through the glass, the Chicago skyline stretched out wide and golden in the late afternoon light. For one moment, just one, everything felt possible. She had no idea what was coming. Nolan Crawford found out about the scholarship on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, he'd made 3 phone calls. By Tuesday evening, he had a plan. It wasn't the money. Nolan didn't care about the money. The scholarship was pocket change against CBI's quarterly revenue. It was what the scholarship meant. If Edward was lucid enough to create a foundation initiative, interview a candidate, and authorize funding, then Edward was lucid enough to run things. And if the board found that out, they'd start asking questions Nolan couldn't afford to answer. Questions like, why did you tell us he was resting at home for the last 2 years? Questions like, why didn't you disclose his diagnosis to shareholders? Questions like, what else have you been hiding? Nolan had known about the Alzheimer's for 23 months. He'd buried it. Told the board Edward was stepping back gradually. Told investors he was in an advisory role. Told the press he was enjoying a well-earned rest. Every quarter, he'd forged Edward's signature on documents that required the chairman emeritus's approval. Every quarter, he'd gotten away with it. Now a woman from Memphis, with $38 in her bank account, was about to blow the whole thing open. Not because she was trying to, but because his grandfather liked her. Nolan called Genevieve into his office. Who is she? Tiana Anderson, 29, Memphis. 2 jobs, home health aide and pharmacy cashier. No degree, no connections, no money. Criminal record? Clean. Social media? Almost non-existent. Nolan leaned back. Then we make this about my grandfather's condition, a vulnerable old man with a degenerative brain disease, and a stranger who just happened to show up at the right time. And if she pushes back? She won't. People like her don't have lawyers. He picked up the phone. Get me Colton. 2 weeks later, Tiana flew back to Chicago to finalize the scholarship paperwork. Edward had arranged the ticket. She'd packed her one good blouse again, ironed it the night before, hung it on the bathroom door so it wouldn't wrinkle in the bag. She was nervous. The good kind. The kind that means something real is about to happen. She walked into the CBI building, expecting Edward. She got Colton Beach instead. Conference room, 16th floor. No windows. Colton sat at the far end of the table, 38 years old, tailored navy suit, the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. A legal pad in front of him, a manila folder, and a look on his face that told Tiana this wasn't a paperwork meeting. Ms. Anderson, thank you for coming. Please, sit. She sat. I'll be direct. The Crawford Foundation scholarship you've been offered is currently under internal review. Review? Mr. Crawford told me it was approved. Mr. Crawford is a 78-year-old man suffering from a progressive neurodegenerative condition. His ability to make binding institutional commitments is, to put it delicately, a matter of ongoing evaluation. The words landed like a slap. Tiana's stomach dropped. What are you saying? I'm saying there are concerns. About influence. About timing. About how a woman with no prior connection to Mr. Crawford ended up at his bedside for 5 days and walked away with a full-ride scholarship. I didn't walk away with anything. He offered, Ms. Anderson. Colton's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to offer you a resolution. He slid a document across the table, then a check. $15,000. made out to Tiana Anderson. This is a one-time courtesy payment. In exchange, you sign a non-disclosure agreement and withdraw from the scholarship program. No further contact with Mr. Crawford. No public statements. Clean and simple. Tiana stared at the check. $15,000. More money than she'd earned in the last 8 months combined. Enough to pay off her car. Enough to cover 6 months of rent. Enough to make the constant math in her head stop, even for a little while. She looked at Colton. He was watching her the way a man watches a fish near a hook. Patient, still, certain. I didn't do anything wrong. No one is saying you did. This is simply, I stayed with him because he was alone. I visited him because he didn't have anyone. I didn't know who he was. I didn't ask for anything. I understand. And this offer reflects our appreciation for, I don't want it. She pushed the check back across the table with 2 fingers. Colton's smile didn't flicker, but something behind his eyes recalculated. Ms. Anderson, I'd encourage you to think carefully. This offer won't be extended again. I don't need to think carefully. I didn't do anything wrong. She stood up, walked out. The door clicked shut behind her. In the elevator going down, her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from rage. And underneath the rage, a small, cold voice asking, did you just turn down $15,000 with 38 in your account? She tried calling Edward. Voicemail. Tried again. Voicemail. Again. Nothing. Genevieve had already taken his phone. 3 days later, it started. A blind item on a financial gossip site. Fortune 500 patriarch suffering from cognitive decline, reportedly targeted by unvetted outsider. Family sources express grave concern over potential elder manipulation. No names. Didn't need them. The details were specific enough. Then the phone calls began. A Memphis reporter, young, eager, polite in the way that means he's about to write something ugly. Ms. Anderson, we're running a story about concerns raised by the Crawford family regarding their grandfather's care. Would you like to comment? She hung up. Her co-worker at the pharmacy showed her the article during break. Didn't say anything. Just held up her phone with a look that said, is this you? 2 days later, her manager called her into the back office. He couldn't make eye contact. Tiana, nobody's saying you did anything. But with everything going on, the article, the calls, corporate thinks it's best if you take some time off. Just until things settle down. Am I fired? No. No, you're just not on the schedule right now. She walked out into the parking lot, sat in her car, hands on the steering wheel, engine off. Rain starting on the windshield. Not fired, not scheduled, not accused, not cleared. Just erased. Quietly, professionally, by people who did this for a living. And somewhere in a house in Chicago, Edward Crawford's phone sat in a drawer in Genevieve Prescott's desk. Because the man who owned a $4.2 billion empire wasn't allowed to make his own phone calls anymore. Not by his disease, by his grandson. For 3 days, Tiana didn't do anything. She went to her night shift at the home health agency, the one job that hadn't pushed her out. She came home, sat in her apartment, stared at the wall. Then her mother called. You still sitting in that apartment feeling sorry for yourself? Mama, I'm not. Yes, you are. I can hear it in your breathing. Silence. Baby, if you let them scare you off, they win twice. Once when they take the scholarship, and again when they take your spine. I didn't raise no quitter. Tiana closed her eyes. Loretta Anderson had never raised her voice in her life. She didn't need to. What am I supposed to do? They have lawyers. They have money. You have the truth. That's always been enough. Tiana hung up, sat still for 10 minutes. Then she started making calls. First call, Dr. Raymond Ellis. Dr. Ellis, when you treated Mr. Crawford, was he competent? Could he make his own decisions? Ellis didn't hesitate. He has early-stage Alzheimer's, that's a fact. But during his lucid intervals, his cognitive function was fully intact. He understood where he was. He made clear, rational decisions. If someone's claiming he lacked capacity, they're wrong. I'll put that in writing. Hospital letterhead. Tomorrow morning. Second call. Sandra Whitmore, hospital social worker. Sandra, I need his intake records. Everything. My name, the admission notes, proof I wasn't paid. Sandra pulled it up. All there. Tiana's name, her contact information, the notation, non-related civilian who accompanied patient from scene. No payment, no arrangement, no contract. Then Sandra found something else. Tiana, there's a security footage request log in the system. Memphis Airport, gate B14. The footage from that night exists, preserved as part of the medical incident report. It shows everything? Everything. The collapse, the crowd walking past, you running to him, the ambulance. Time-stamped. Tiana sat on her bed with a legal pad, wrote down what she had. Dr. Ellis. Edward was competent. Hospital records. She never asked for money. Airport footage. 40 people walked past, and she was the only one who stopped. It wasn't a legal team. It wasn't a PR firm. It was the truth, written on a yellow legal pad in a studio apartment in Memphis. Her mother said it was enough. Her mother was never wrong. 400 miles away, Edward Crawford was sitting in a room that looked like a hotel, but functioned like a cage. Nolan had arranged it, called it a wellness evaluation. The doctors were real. The care was adequate. But the phone in his room was disconnected, and every visitor required Nolan's approval. Edward had survived 2 bankruptcies, a hostile takeover, and a congressional investigation. A locked room wasn't going to stop him. On the 3rd night, during a strong, lucid window, he asked his night nurse, a young woman named Ruth, for a favor. Ruth, I need a phone. A real one. Ruth hesitated. She could lose her job. But she'd watched this man for 3 days, watched him cycle between confusion and clarity, watched him ask about someone named Tiana every time the fog lifted. She'd seen enough to know this wasn't a man being protected. This was a man being silenced. She brought him a prepaid phone the next morning, under his breakfast tray. Edward waited for the lucid window. When it came, sharp, sudden, he dialed. Tiana, it's Edward. Mr. Crawford, where are you? I've been calling. I know. Listen to me. My grandson has me in a facility. He's trying to have me declared incompetent to take control of the foundation. He's been hiding my diagnosis from the board for 2 years. Now he's using it against both of us. Calm, controlled, CEO voice. I need you to trust me for 1 more week. Can you do that? Yes. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. I need you there. Bring everything, the doctor, the records, whatever you have. I have the airport security footage. Silence. Then, quietly, good. He hung up, set the phone on the bed. Already he could feel the edges softening, the fog pressing in from the sides like water rising. He grabbed a pen, tore a strip from a magazine on the nightstand, wrote in shaking capital letters, Tiana, board meeting, 1 week, don't forget. He taped it to the back of the phone. Read it 3 times. Then again, because he knew that in an hour, maybe less, he wouldn't remember writing it. He put the phone under his pillow, closed his eyes, and held on. The boardroom of Crawford Bellingham Industries occupied the entire east wall of the 22nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Lake Michigan stretching out gray and endless behind the glass. A mahogany table long enough to land a small plane on. 12 leather chairs. 12 board members. And at the head of the table, Nolan Crawford, in a suit that cost more than Tiana's rent for a year. He looked calm. He looked prepared. He had a 50-page presentation on fiduciary responsibility, a legal brief from Colton Beach on cognitive capacity standards, and a draft resolution to formally reduce Edward Crawford's role to honorary, stripping his authority over the foundation, the scholarship, and every decision he'd made in the past 6 months. Genevieve sat at his right. Colton stood by the door. The agenda was simple. Declare the old man unfit. Kill the scholarship. Bury the Memphis situation. Move on. Nolan opened the meeting at 10 a.m. sharp. Thank you all for being here on short notice. As you know, my grandfather's health has been a matter of increasing concern within the family. Today, I'm asking the board to formalize what many of us have privately acknowledged, that Edward Crawford, due to the progression of his condition, is no longer in a position to make binding commitments on behalf of this organization. Heads nodded. Sympathetic murmurs. 2 board members exchanged glances. They'd been told Edward was resting. They hadn't been told much else. Nolan continued. Specifically, I'm asking the board to void a recent scholarship initiative created without proper authorization, and to approve a revised governance structure that... The door opened. Every head turned. Edward Crawford walked in. Suit, tie, cane. His back was straight. His eyes were clear. His jaw was set in a way that anyone who'd known him for more than 5 minutes would recognize. The look of a man who built a $4 billion company from a car he once slept in. Behind him, Tiana Anderson. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Nolan stood. Grandfather, this is a closed session. I'm the founder. I don't need an invitation to my own company. Edward's voice filled the room. No tremor, no hesitation. This was his strongest lucid window, and he knew it. He could feel the clock ticking inside his own skull, the fog waiting at the edges. He had maybe an hour, maybe less. He intended to use every minute. He took his seat. Tiana sat in a chair against the wall, not at the table. She wasn't here to speak. She was here to be seen. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your patience. I'll be brief. Edward nodded to his personal attorney, who connected a laptop to the boardroom screen. The airport security footage began to play. Gate B14, Memphis International. Timestamp, 7:43 p.m. The board watched in silence. An old man, Edward, wandering through the terminal. Confused. Alone. Sitting in a plastic chair for an hour. Then standing. Then falling. Face first onto the tile. Then the part that mattered. A businessman stepping over his body. A woman steering her suitcase around him. A gate agent announcing boarding without calling for help. Person after person after person. Walking past. Looking away. Choosing not to see. And then, Tiana. Dropping her bag. Running. Kneeling. Checking his airway. Holding his head off the cold floor. Staying. While the boarding door closed. While the jet bridge pulled back. while Flight 1482 taxied and lifted off without her. The footage ran for 4 minutes. Nobody in the boardroom moved. Edward paused the video. Tiana frozen on screen, holding his hand in the back of an ambulance. That woman gave up a scholarship interview she'd spent 3 years working toward. She lost a non-refundable plane ticket she bought with money she didn't have. She rode in an ambulance with a stranger who didn't know his own name because he asked her not to leave. He let that sit. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know this company existed. She didn't ask for a single thing. Then Edward turned to the documents. Dr. Raymond Ellis, Memphis Regional Hospital, board-certified physician. He treated me for 5 days. Edward held up the letterhead. His formal medical assessment. Early-stage Alzheimer's, yes. But during lucid intervals, my cognitive function is fully intact. I understood what I was doing when I created this scholarship. I had capacity. The decision is legally valid. He set the letter down. Now, let me show you something else. He opened a second folder. Internal CBI documents, emails, memos, board filings from the past 23 months, every one signed by Nolan, every one stating that Edward was in good health and actively engaged in an advisory capacity. My grandson told you I was resting. I was deteriorating. He told you I was advising. I was forgetting my wife's name. He concealed my diagnosis from this board, from our shareholders, and from federal regulators for 23 months. The room shifted. Board members who'd been nodding along with Nolan 5 minutes ago were now staring at the documents in front of them. Edward continued. And then, when I made a decision he couldn't control, he reversed course. Suddenly, I wasn't resting. Suddenly, I was incompetent. He hid my disease when it protected his stock price. He weaponized my disease when it threatened his authority. Edward looked directly at Nolan. You can't have it both ways, son. Either I was well enough for you to hide it, or I was sick enough for you to use it. Pick one, because this board is going to need an answer. Nolan's face was white. Colton Beach was already gathering his briefcase. Genevieve hadn't moved, but her resignation letter was being composed behind her eyes. Edward turned back to the board. I built this company on one principle. If you have power, use it to open doors, not to guard them. He placed one final document on the table. The competency petition. Drafted by Colton Beach, authorized by Nolan Crawford. A legal filing to have Edward declared mentally unfit, giving Nolan unilateral control of the Crawford Foundation's assets. My grandson tried to lock me in a room, take my phone, and erase the woman who saved my life. Not because she did anything wrong, but because her existence threatened his cover-up. Silence. 12 people. Not one sound. The board chair called the vote. Helen Crawford Medical Scholarship. Approved. Unanimously. Nolan Crawford. Placed under immediate internal ethics review. Colton Beach. Escorted from the building by security. Genevieve Prescott. Submitted her resignation before the vote was counted. Tiana sat against the wall through all of it. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The footage spoke. The records spoke. Edward spoke. Her actions spoke 3 weeks ago on the floor of Gate B14. When it was over, Edward caught her eye across the room. He nodded, small, steady, certain. Then she saw it. A flicker. His eyes clouded for just a second. His hand tightened on the armrest. The fog, pressing in. The window closing. She gave him the smallest nod back. I'm here. The moment passed. He was still standing. After the boardroom cleared, Edward and Tiana walked through the CBI lobby together. He moved slowly. The cane wasn't for show. The lucid window was closing, and his body knew it before his mind did. The scholarship covers everything: tuition, housing, stipend, mentorship. He paused. I've also arranged for your mother to receive physical therapy through the foundation, twice a week. Tiana stopped walking. Mr. Crawford, why? All of this? Why? His voice went soft. Because 40 years ago, I was broke, sleeping in my car, and a woman I didn't know, a waitress in Columbus, Ohio, let me sleep on her couch for 2 weeks, fed me, never asked for anything back. I never found her again. Spent my whole life building something, and never did anything that mattered as much as what she did with a couch and a plate of eggs. He looked at Tiana. You remind me of her. You remind me that the whole point of having anything is what you do with it when nobody's watching. Tiana hugged him. He was stiff at first. Then one hand came up, 2 pats on her back. Quietly, you remind me of Helen, you know? This time, he knew exactly who he was talking about. 18 months later, Memphis, South Side. A small clinic, clean, bright, nothing fancy. Dr. Tiana Anderson, white coat, stethoscope, steady hands, was reviewing a chart when her phone buzzed. A photo from Loretta. Her mother standing with a walker, smiling, upright. First time in 3 years. Tiana pressed the phone to her chest, put it away. A receptionist knocked. Dr. Anderson, your 3 o'clock is here. She walked to the waiting room and stopped. In the corner, corduroy jacket, Edward Crawford. Thinner, slower. The Alzheimer's had advanced. Lucid windows came rarely now, lasting minutes instead of hours. A caretaker sat beside him, but Edward was staring at the wall with the gentle blankness of a man who'd made peace with forgetting. Tiana knelt in front of him, took his hand. He looked at her. No recognition. Do I know you? Yeah, Ed, you do. He didn't remember her name. Didn't remember the airport, the boardroom, the check she'd pushed back across the table. But when she held his hand, he smiled. The same smile. Room 312. The first time she'd said, I'm here. Some things live deeper than memory. On the wall behind her, the Helen Crawford Memorial Medical Scholarship. Because kindness without an audience is the only kind that counts. Tiana Anderson's decision at gate B14 took 2 seconds. But it was built on 29 years of being raised right. By a woman who couldn't walk to the mailbox, but never stopped teaching her daughter what it meant to show up for people. Edward Crawford stayed on his foundation chair until his condition no longer allowed it. On his last day in the office, he signed one final document, a permanent endowment guaranteeing the Helen Crawford Medical Scholarship would outlive him. It expanded to 5 recipients per year. Every acceptance letter begins with the same line. This scholarship exists because a stranger chose to stay. Nolan Crawford was stripped of his CEO title after a board-mandated ethics review. Colton Beach was disbarred. Genevieve Prescott resigned and was never heard from again. Tiana graduated, opened a clinic in the same Memphis neighborhood where she once took the bus because she couldn't afford parking. She became Edward's personal physician, visiting him every week, long after he stopped remembering her name. Not once did she miss a visit. On the days he didn't recognize her, she'd sit beside him, hold his hand, and tell him stories about a man in a corduroy jacket who changed a stranger's life at an airport. He'd listen. Sometimes he'd smile. He never knew she was talking about him. The last scholarship recipient each year receives the Tiana Anderson Award, given to the applicant who demonstrated extraordinary compassion before they ever set foot in medical school.
This is the one thing I want you to carry with you after this. The world is full of people who have when it's easy, when it's convenient, when there's something in it for them. But the kind of kindness that actually matters is the kind that costs you something. The kind where you lose something real and you do it anyway, not for a reward, not for a story, because you couldn't live with yourself if you walk away. And here's what nobody tells you about doing the right thing. It doesn't always feel good right away. Sometimes it feels like you just lost everything. Sometimes the world will punish you for it before it rewards you. But that doesn't mean you were wrong. It just means the truth hasn't caught up yet, and it's always catch up. But the part that really gets me, 40 people walked past that night. 40, not bad people, just busy people. People who told themselves it wasn't their problem. And I can't help but wonder, how many times have I been one of those 40? How many times have you? So tell me, have you ever given up something that mattered to have someone who couldn't give you anything back? Drop it in the comments. If this one hit you, share it, like it, subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Because kindness without an audience is the only kind that counts.